Why does God allow your strongest prayers to feel powerless against lust? If you've ever whispered, "God, please take this away," at 3 a.m., feeling like your prayers bounce off the ceiling? If you've wondered whether God has given up on you because this one area of your life feels unconquerable, breathe with me for a moment. Right here, right now, I want you to know something. You're not broken. You're not abandoned. And what I'm about to share with you tonight might be the most sacred truth you've ever encountered about your struggle. I'm James, and tonight we're going deeper than we've ever gone before. For the past 7 years, I've been diving into the private journals, the secret confessions, the raw struggles of history's greatest believers. What I've discovered will revolutionize how you understand your battle, not just with lust, but with the very nature of spiritual transformation itself. Type listening if you're ready to journey into territory most churches won't touch. The sacred mystery of why God allows his most devoted followers to wrestle with desires that feel overwhelming. Because here's what I've learned. Sometimes the struggles we think are destroying us are actually the very tools God uses to reconstruct us into something we could never become any other way. Let me take you inside the private chambers of 3 men who shaped Christianity forever. Men whose public victories were forged in the fire of secret struggles that would shock their followers. Picture this. Augustine, the great bishop, the theologian whose words still echo through seminaries today, sitting alone in his study at age 35. He's already converted, already baptized, already leading the church. But in his private journal, the one his congregation never saw, he writes these devastating words: "Grant me chastity and continence, but not yet." But here's what most people don't know, what changed everything for me when I discovered it. He wrote those words not as a young pagan, but as a mature Christian leader. Even as a bishop, he confessed to close friends that certain desires would rise like smoke during his deepest prayers, uninvited and unwelcome. Can you feel what's happening inside you right now? That sense of recognition? You're not the first person of faith to feel this way. You're part of an ancient lineage. Augustine discovered something that transformed his entire understanding of grace. The very persistence of my struggle became the doorway to understanding divine mercy in ways that those who never struggled could never comprehend. David's midnight wrestlings. Now let me show you something that will change how you read the Psalms forever. We all know about David and Bathsheba, that moment of public failure. But what most don't realize is that David's private journals reveal an ongoing battle that lasted decades. Psalm 139, verses 23 to 24, wasn't written once in a moment of inspiration. It was David's nightly prayer, prayed again and again. "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts." In the Dead Sea Scrolls, archaeologists found a fragment that scholars believe contains David's private prayer, words never meant for public worship. "When desire rises like a lion in the night, let me remember that you see the heart's intention, not just its struggle." Do you feel that shift happening in your chest? That recognition that you're not alone in this midnight battle? David, the man after God's own heart, fought the same fight you're fighting tonight. Paul's mysterious thorn. But here's where everything I thought I knew about spiritual maturity got completely turned upside down. Most scholars now believe that Paul's famous thorn in the flesh wasn't a physical ailment. The Greek word skolops suggests something internal, persistent, humiliating, something that attacked his sense of spiritual achievement. Think about this. Paul, who was caught up to the third heaven, who planted churches across the Roman Empire, who wrote half the New Testament, this same Paul begged God 3 times to remove a struggle that kept him humble, dependent, broken before grace. And God said no. Not because God doesn't love Paul, not because God lacks power, but because God was accomplishing something through that struggle that could happen no other way. Paul's greatest revelation, "My power is made perfect in weakness," was born from his deepest struggle. The very weakness he wanted removed became the platform for experiencing divine power. Can you feel what's happening to your understanding right now? How your entire framework for spiritual maturity is shifting. You're not behind in your spiritual journey. You're right where these giants of faith were, wrestling with the same mystery, discovering the same grace. Type profound. If this is hitting you differently than anything you've ever heard in church, now that you're sitting in the same seat as Augustine, David, and Paul, let's dive into the theology that most pastoral care never addresses. Why does a sovereign God who could instantly remove sexual struggle choose not to? What I'm about to share comes from years of studying the deepest theological minds. Not to impress you with knowledge, but because understanding the why transforms everything about how you experienced it, the what. The doctrine of sanctifying struggle. Thomas Aquinas, in his Summa Theologica, writes about what he calls sanctifying struggle. Battles that God permits not as punishment, but as instruments of grace. Listen to this profound insight. Certain struggles are so intimately connected to our fallen nature that removing them would actually hinder spiritual growth rather than help it. Here's what this means for you. Your struggle with lust isn't just about sexual desire. It's the deepest expression of the human need to possess, control, and find ultimate satisfaction in created things rather than the Creator. Every moment you feel that pull, you're experiencing the most visceral reminder of your need for grace. Can you sense how this reframes everything? Your struggle isn't a bug in your spiritual programming. It's a feature that keeps you tethered to the source of all life and love. The mystery of divine timing. John of the Cross, in his Dark Night of the Soul, describes something that might blow your mind. He talks about how God sometimes permits what he calls spiritual dryness and sensual uprising simultaneously. Picture this. You're having your deepest, most intimate prayer time with God. You feel his presence more clearly than ever. And right in that sacred moment, sexual desire arises powerfully, almost aggressively. This isn't spiritual schizophrenia. This isn't the devil attacking your prayer life. John of the Cross says this is the tension between the already and not yet of redemption. You are already transformed in spirit, but not yet fully transformed in flesh. And God uses that exact tension to teach you moment-by-moment dependence on grace. I can't tell you how many times I've experienced this exact thing. I used to think it meant I was spiritually immature. Now I understand it's actually a sign that God is doing deep work that requires this specific kind of spiritual muscle building. How many of you have experienced this? Your deepest spiritual moments interrupted by your strongest desires. The refining fire principle, Malachi 3:3 says, God sits like a refiner of silver. But here's what transformed my understanding. I learned how a silversmith actually works. A silversmith doesn't know the silver is ready when all impurities are removed. He knows it's ready when he can see his own reflection clearly in the metal. The fire isn't trying to destroy the silver, it's revealing what was always meant to be there. Your struggle with lust is God's refining fire. He's not waiting until it's completely gone to use you. He's watching for his reflection to become clear in your response to the struggle. Will you run to him or away from him? Will you trust his grace or rely on your performance? This realization changed my entire relationship with my struggle. The battle wasn't a sign of spiritual immaturity. It was a sign that God was doing deep work that could only happen under the pressure of persistent weakness. Do you feel that shift happening in your soul right now? That movement from shame to curiosity about what God might be doing through this struggle? That's not just understanding. That's the beginning of transformation. Now I want to take you into territory that bridges the ancient and the modern. Because God works through psychology, not around it. And what we're discovering about the brain and soul will amaze you. You see, I've learned that understanding the psychology of spiritual struggle doesn't diminish its sacred nature. It actually reveals how beautifully God has designed our minds to be transformed through exactly these kinds of battles. The neuroscience of sacred struggle. Recent neuroscience research has discovered something that gives me chills every time I think about it. People who report ongoing spiritual struggles while maintaining faith show increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for meaning-making, empathy, and complex emotional processing. Dr. Kenneth Pargament's research at Bowling Green found that what he calls spiritual struggle with maintained faith actually rewires the brain for deeper emotional intelligence and spiritual sensitivity. Do you realize what this means? Your struggle with lust isn't damaging your brain. It's literally making you more capable of understanding and helping others. God has designed your mind so that wrestling with Him transforms your capacity for love and wisdom. This is why so many of you have told me that your deepest struggles have made you more compassionate, more understanding, more able to sit with others in their pain. It's not despite your struggle, it's because of it. The shadow work dimension. Carl Jung, who deeply influenced modern understanding of spirituality and psychology, wrote about sexual desire as part of what he called the shadow, aspects of ourselves we'd rather not acknowledge, but that contain tremendous creative and spiritual energy. Jung observed something fascinating. People who try to completely suppress sexual desire often lose access to their creative fire, their passion for life, their ability to connect deeply with others. But those who learn to acknowledge the desire while choosing not to be controlled by it develop what he called conscious suffering, the ability to transform pain into wisdom. This is what the mystics knew intuitively, and science is now confirming. The goal isn't to become a spiritual eunuch, it's to become fully human, integrating all of your energy under the guidance of divine love. The trauma connection that changes everything. Here's something that might crack your heart wide open with compassion for yourself. Persistent sexual struggle often has roots in early attachment wounds, childhood trauma, or fundamental questions about worth and lovability. For many of you watching right now, the struggle with lust isn't primarily about sex. It's your psyche's attempt to heal something much deeper. It's your soul's misguided but understandable attempt to find the love, acceptance, and security that every human heart desperately needs. God doesn't just want to heal your sin, He wants to heal your wounds. And sometimes He uses the very struggle that brings you to your knees to reveal wounds that need His tender touch. Maybe your struggle with lust is connected to early abandonment or rejection, perfectionism that makes you feel you have to earn love, shame about your body or sexuality, deep questions about whether you're truly lovable. If you're recognizing that your struggle might be connected to deeper wounds that need God's healing touch, type healing below. Your acknowledgement might give someone else permission to see their own wounds with compassion. The integration journey. True spiritual maturity isn't the absence of sexual desire. It's the integration of that powerful energy under the guidance of divine love. The goal isn't to kill your sexuality. It's to heal and direct it toward its true purpose, intimate connection and creative expression in service of love. This is why marriage doesn't automatically solve sexual struggle for many people. The underlying need to be fully known, fully loved, fully accepted can only ultimately be met by God. When that deeper need is being met, sexual intimacy becomes what it was designed to be. Overflow of fullness rather than attempt to fill emptiness. Can you feel how this understanding is lifting some of the pressure off your struggle? How it's moving you from shame toward curiosity about what God wants to heal and integrate in your heart? Now that your heart is opening to the sacred nature of this struggle, let's explore how to transform your battle into a contemplative practice that deepens your intimacy with God. What I'm about to share comes from the Desert Fathers and Mothers, people who spent their lives learning how to transform human struggle into spiritual gold. These aren't quick fixes, they're ancient technologies of the soul. Practice 1, the sacred pause. This comes directly from Saint Anthony the Great, who developed it specifically for sexual temptation. When desire arises, instead of immediately fighting it or giving into it, you pause and ask, God, what are you trying to teach me through this moment? Saint Anthony wrote, the demon of lust often comes disguised as the angel of loneliness, teaching us that our deepest need is not for sexual satisfaction, but for divine intimacy. Here's how you practice the sacred pause. Feel the desire without judgment. Breathe and notice what's happening in your body and heart. Ask the deeper question, what am I really hungry for right now? Connection, comfort, excitement, escape? Offer that deeper hunger directly to God. Lord, I give you this longing. How do you want to meet it? Choose one small act of love, prayer, service, creativity, genuine connection with another person. The beauty of this practice is that it doesn't shame the desire or immediately try to make it go away. It acknowledges that desire is information about what your heart is truly seeking. Practice 2, contemplative confession. This isn't just admitting you messed up. It's a deep, ongoing conversation with God about the landscape of your heart. Every morning, spend 10 minutes telling God not just about your struggles, but about your fears, your longings, your questions about worth and love. Let him into the psychological spaces where lust grows. Brother Lawrence, who practiced the presence of God while washing dishes, said, "I confess my desires to God as I would share my dreams with a friend, not because he doesn't know, but because the sharing itself transforms me." Try this. Instead of "God, I'm sorry I struggled with lust again," pray, "God, I felt so lonely last night, and lust felt like the only comfort available. Help me understand what my heart was really seeking and how you want to meet that need." Practice 3, desire mapping. This practice involves becoming a spiritual detective, tracing your sexual desire back to its emotional and spiritual roots. When you feel lust arising, ask yourself, what was I feeling right before this desire arose? What comfort am I seeking? What wound is this trying to heal? What legitimate need is being expressed in an illegitimate way? Many in our community have discovered that lust often follows patterns: loneliness, rejection, stress, feeling disconnected from purpose, or even spiritual highs. It's your soul's misguided attempt at self-medication. Type pattern. If you're recognizing specific emotional triggers that lead to your struggle, understanding your pattern is the first step toward healing it. Practice 4, the offering ritual. Create a physical ritual for offering your sexual energy to God. This honors the power of that energy while directing it toward its true purpose. This might involve lighting a candle while praying, "I offer this desire as worship to you," writing your struggles on paper and burning them as an offering, using your sexual energy for creative acts, art, music, writing, passionate service to others, taking a walk and offering your restlessness to God. St. Francis understood that sexual energy is essentially creative fire. He wrote, "This fire can either consume us or transform us. When offered to God, it becomes the fuel for passionate love of the divine and radical service to others." The goal isn't to eliminate sexual energy. It's to channel it toward its highest purpose. Some of the most creative, passionate, life-giving people in history were those who learned to redirect sexual energy towards spiritual and creative expression. Which of these practices is calling to your heart right now? Type "ready" if you're willing to try one of them this week, and let us know which one feels most accessible to you. One of the most profound discoveries in my research has been how sexual struggle transforms when it moves from the isolation of shame into the light of sacred community. Because here's what I've learned. The struggle that feels like it's destroying you in isolation becomes the very thing that qualifies you to bring healing to others when you find the courage to share it in safe community. The miracle of witnessed struggle. There's something that happens when you share your deepest shame with another person and receive grace instead of judgment. The power of the struggle to define you begins to break. Dr. Brené Brown's research confirms what the early church knew instinctively. Shame cannot survive being spoken in an atmosphere of empathy. When you say, "I struggle with lust" to someone who responds with "me too," and you're still worthy of love instead of judgment, something shifts in your soul. But here's what goes even deeper. Witnessed struggle becomes shared wisdom. When you're honest about your battle, you give others permission to be honest about theirs. Your vulnerability creates a sanctuary where healing can happen for people you don't even know are watching. I think about Marcus, who joined our community 2 years ago. He was convinced his struggle with pornography made him unfit for Christian community. But when he finally shared his story in our comments, 17 other men reached out privately to thank him for his courage. His shame became a bridge to healing for others. If you've experienced the miracle of sharing your struggle and receiving grace instead of judgment, how did that moment change your relationship with shame? Share a heart below. Your testimony might be the lifeline someone else needs to take their first brave step. Creating sacred accountability. Real accountability isn't someone checking up on your failures. It's someone who knows your heart's deepest longings and helps you stay connected to them. Find one person who can ask you not just, "Did you mess up?" but questions like, "What was your heart really seeking when you struggled? How can we pray for the wounded places in your soul? What would help you feel more connected to God's love right now? How is God using this struggle to prepare you for something beautiful?" I have a friend who texts me during my hardest seasons. "How's your heart today?" Not, "How's your purity?" but "How's your heart?" That simple question has saved me more times than I can count, because it reminds me that I'm not just a struggle to be managed. I'm a person to be loved. The ministry of wounded healers. Here's something beautiful that's happening in our community. Those who've walked through the deepest struggles with lust are becoming the most effective counselors, pastors, and friends to others in similar battles. Sarah, who I mentioned in previous videos, now leads a support group for women struggling with pornography. She told me, "My shame became my qualification." I can sit with women in their darkest moments because I know that territory intimately. Marcus, who battled sex addiction for years, became a therapist specializing in sexual wholeness. He says, "Clients trust me because they know I'm not speaking from theory, I'm speaking from the trenches." David, who nearly lost his marriage to sexual betrayal, now helps other couples rebuild trust and intimacy. His wife told me, "We wouldn't be qualified to help others if we hadn't walked through our own hell and found God's grace on the other side." Can you feel something stirring in your spirit? A sense that your struggle might not just be about your own healing, but about preparation for helping others find theirs? Building your support ecosystem. Here are practical steps for creating supportive community around your struggle. Find your one person. Start with one trusted friend who can know your full story. Join a group, whether online or in person. Connect with others on the journey. Seek professional integration. Therapists who understand both psychology and spirituality. Serve others. Channel your energy into helping people with different struggles. Spiritual mentorship. A mature believer who can guide your spiritual growth through this. Remember, you don't have to have it all figured out to deserve community. Community is where you figure it out together. Now let's bring this profound understanding into the nitty-gritty of daily life. Because transformation doesn't happen in mountaintop moments. It happens in the accumulation of small, faithful choices made day after day. Here's how you live this new understanding, moment by moment, creating a rhythm of transformation that honors both the sacred nature of your struggle and the practical reality of daily life. Morning, identity alignment ritual. Instead of checking your phone first thing and filling your mind with the world's definition of success and worth, spend the first 15 minutes aligning your identity with God's truth about who you are. Speak these truths over yourself, not as positive affirmations, but as declarations of reality. I am loved by God not because of my performance, but because of His character. I am being transformed by grace, not perfected by willpower. My struggles do not define me. God's love defines me. I am being prepared for purpose through every battle I face. Then read Psalm 139, 13-18, slowly, letting each verse reset your understanding of how God sees you. Not what you've done, but whose you are. Throughout the day, the redirect flow. When sexual desire arises, instead of shame or immediate resistance, practice this gentle redirect that honors both your humanity and your calling. Acknowledge with compassion. I notice desire arising. This is human and normal. I don't have to judge myself for feeling this. Investigate with curiosity. What is my heart really seeking right now? Connection, comfort, excitement, rest, escape from stress? Redirect with love. God, I offer this energy to you. How can I channel it toward genuine love and life-giving connection? Act with purpose. Do one small act of genuine connection. Call a friend, encourage someone, create something beautiful, serve someone in need. The goal isn't to eliminate the energy, but to redirect it toward its true purpose: love and creative expression in service of others. Evening. Grace reflection. Before bed, instead of reviewing your failures, practice reviewing God's grace through a simple examination. Where did I experience God's love for me today? How did I see Him working through my struggles and victories? What am I grateful for in my journey toward wholeness? How can I trust Him more deeply tomorrow? What did my struggles today teach me about my need for grace? Weekly, the deeper integration work. Once a week, engage in deeper work that addresses the roots of struggle. Journal deeply about the emotional patterns beneath your sexual struggles. Meet with a counselor or spiritual director who integrates psychology and faith practice. Contemplative prayer or meditation that addresses underlying wounds. Engage in creative expression that channels your energy toward beauty. Serve others in ways that use your unique gifts and calling. Monthly, community deepening. Once a month, intentionally deepen your connections with others on the journey. Share honestly in a support group about your growth and struggles. Have a deeper conversation with your accountability partner about heart patterns. Attend a retreat or workshop focused on sexual wholeness and spiritual growth. Read books that integrate spirituality, psychology, and healthy sexuality. Pray specifically about how God might be calling you to help others. As we near the completion of our journey together tonight, I want to lift your eyes to the eternal perspective that transforms everything about how you see your struggle, not just as a temporary problem to solve, but as part of your eternal story with God. Your struggle in the light of eternity. In eternity, you won't remember your struggle with lust as failure. You'll remember it as the sacred classroom where you learn grace. The laboratory where you discovered that God's love isn't based on your performance. The battlefield where you learned to run toward God instead of away from Him. Every moment you chose surrender over shame. Every time you reached for prayer instead of pornography. Every decision to trust God's love over your own achievement. These weren't just moral victories. They were acts of worship that echo through eternity. The angels who never struggled can marvel at God's power, but they can never testify to His grace the way you can. Your struggle is writing a song of redemption that only you can sing. The cosmic purpose of your battle. Your individual struggle is part of God's larger work of redeeming human sexuality itself. Through your battle, through your healing, through your future ministry to others, God is writing a story of sexual wholeness that will impact generations you'll never meet. The enemy convinced you that your struggle was insignificant, shameful, disqualifying, but God sees it as strategically important for His kingdom purposes. Your healing becomes part of healing the world's broken sexuality. Every time you choose grace over performance, you're modeling a different way of being human for everyone watching your life. Every moment you receive love despite your struggle, you're demonstrating the character of God to a world that believes love must be earned. Close your eyes for a moment and see yourself 5 years from now. Your struggle has become your strength. The shame that once defined you has been transformed into a deep well of compassion for others. The weakness that once isolated you has become the bridge that connects you to hurting hearts. You're not just free from sexual struggle, you're using your freedom to help others find theirs. You're not just sexually whole, you're helping heal the sexual brokenness around you. The person God is making you through this struggle is someone the world desperately needs. Someone who understands both the depth of sexual brokenness and the power of divine grace to heal it. Someone who can speak hope into the darkest places because you've been there and found light. Can you see her? Can you see him? That future version of yourself who looks back on this struggle with gratitude because it became the doorway to your deepest purpose. As we complete this sacred journey together tonight, I want you to feel the full weight of what we've discovered. Not as information for your mind, but as healing balm for your soul. Your struggle with lust is not evidence that God has forgotten you. It's not proof that you're broken beyond repair. It's not disqualification from his love or his calling on your life. It's proof that he's preparing you for something extraordinary, something that requires exactly the depth of character, the authentic humility, the intimate knowledge of grace that can only be forged in the fire of this particular struggle. The truth you must never forget: you are part of a sacred lineage that includes David, Augustine, and Paul, not despite your struggle, but because of how you're learning to walk with God through it. Your struggle has divine purpose, connecting you to the greatest spiritual leaders in history and preparing you for ministry that only you can carry. God uses sexual struggle to develop the humility, character, and qualification for purpose that comfortable Christianity never produces. Your weakness is becoming the platform for experiencing and displaying God's power in ways that will amaze you. Community transforms your struggle from shame into shared wisdom that heals others. Your future ministry may be directly connected to your current battle. The very thing that brings you shame today may become your greatest qualification tomorrow. Daily practices can transform every moment of struggle into contemplative intimacy with God, making your battle a form of worship. Your scars are becoming your credentials for helping others heal from wounds you understand intimately. In eternity, this struggle will be remembered as the place where you learned grace, discovered purpose, and became the wounded healer God always intended you to be. The next time desire whispers lies about your worth, remember this night. Remember that you're not battling alone, and you're not battling in vain. You're being prepared for something beautiful, something significant, something that only you can carry because of what you've walked through.